McCaffrey. That's who he would be. All right. I've been looking forward to this. And get this. I got to say this. You know, there's a cool thing about this. So coaches today, I don't know where. I kept texting Frank. I go, where the heck is he? And I realize he's on the beaches of Carolina. He's just hanging out with his family, you know, and probably playing a nice round of golf. People calling him, I got a couple more years of DP and, we're good in here and this and that. He goes, hey, you want to come, coach? Hey, I'm hanging out. I'm going to kind of retool myself here a little bit. Then he gets this opportunity. And before I bring Frank on, do you know where I think this came from? Do you think Frank Reich ever bugged Andrew Luck to come back and play in Indianapolis? Remember, when Frank got that job, what happened? Andrew Luck just went, I'm out. I guarantee you that relationship started there to where we are now today, where Andrew Luck looked at Frank Reich and said, that guy never broke my stones about coming back. And I wonder if that's where that relationship came from. Let's bring him on now. My friend of over 40 years, and there he is, the brand new head football coach of the Stanford Cardinal, Frank Reich. How you doing, Coach?
Dan, how you doing, man? It's great to see you again and be here with you on your show again.
Am I right? Is that where you guys first started that relationship, was when you were in Indianapolis? Or was it that you got closer in Indianapolis? Because there was a lot of pressure. And take me back, Frank, to that time, because now congratulations once again on being named the head coach. But is that where that relationship now, where that thing started for you guys to really understand each other, and where you are right now, where Andrew's the GM of the place and he named you the interim head coach? Is that where this all started?
Yeah, I think it was both of those things. I think you're right. I mean, the whole, talking about him, trying to get him to come back, that was all true. And we kind of remained close. And, I would nag, hey, are you ready? Can you come back? Let's go. We need you. But that year in 2018 was a really special year for us in Indy, and really the prior to the season is where Andrew and I got close, because he was coming off a horrendous shoulder injury, so no one really knows this, but we went into that 18 season. We were talking about this the other day. This blows my mind. We're getting ready to play our first game of the year. And we're probably we've already played our last preseason game. And so we got 2 weeks to the first game. I still have not seen him throw a ball more than 40 yards down the field because of his shoulder. And he was on a pitch count. And so he had so few reps coming into that 2018 season. And we started 1-5, and we were in close games, but we just couldn't quite get it figured out. And then all of a sudden, I think he got fully healthy. We got fully healthy, and we won 9 of 10. And, we won a playoff game. And I can just tell you, I remember, like, no one wanted to play the Colts in 2018 at the end of the year. We were the hottest team in the NFL. And then we went into Kansas City in the playoffs on the road against Mahomes, and we almost beat, we gave them a good run. So, so I think we got, you go through that, you're 1-5, and then you come back and have that season. We got close there, but then that next off season, when he was really struggling, got hurt again and was struggling with the whole injury thing. And, he and I become close, and this isn't like he's keeping me as a friend and as a head coach out of his thought process. The whole time he was processing, can I play anymore? Can I go through this anymore? We're talking about those things. So, I think we went through some pretty dark and deep times together. And I think that's where the foundation was formed.
Boy, the quarterbacks that you've worked with in your life, I mean, Wentz, Kelly, working with him, Boomer, Phillip Rivers, working with Andrew Luck. I mean, all these guys that you've worked with over the years, I mean, it's prepared you for understanding the position. What do you think is the most difficult thing about playing the quarterback position, Frank? Because to me, I can look at a guy like Aaron Rodgers and go, Aaron Rodgers is more talented as an athlete than Tom Brady. But what makes Brady better? I mean, Brady, when he came into the draft, he couldn't jump over a stack of pennies. And here he is, the greatest player in the history of the sport at that position. What's the one thing that makes it so difficult to evaluate that position?
You're so dependent on you are the centerpiece of the offense and the centerpiece of the organization as the quarterback. And you're like a multiplier effect. You make everybody better or worse depending on your play. But yet at the same time, and this is a both end, you're dependent on who's the offensive line, who are the receivers around you. What's does the scheme fit you? And so, but I remember, working with Peyton when I was first at Indy, and I was his quarterback coach, and really just watching him every day at practice. I just real briefly, I started writing this down. I said, what are the 5, watching Peyton Manning, what are the 5 traits of great? And number 1 was just a mental toughness, like to always get better. And that's when you see the Bradys and the Peyton Mannings of the world, the Andrew Lucks, like what made them great is, they just always were getting better. They just always found ways to get better and make everybody else better. So, and then number 2 was, was accuracy. Like, I don't think you can be a great quarterback without big time accuracy. I mean, elite accuracy. Like, if you want to be, I'm talking top 5. I'm not talking top 10 or top 12. That's great. But if you want to be top 5, like you have to have elite accuracy, and then I like to talk about like accelerated vision. How fast can you think, and process what you're seeing over there. And then it's talking about, and then number 4 would be like playmaking ability. This is where the one exception now, how the game has changed, Dan, and I'd be curious what your perspective on this is as well. But now with some of these guys that can run, like, or some of these guys that are just different physically, like a Josh Allen, he has a Superman physical trait. Lamar Jackson has a Superman physical trait. Patrick Mahomes, with his arm talent, has a Superman physical trait that you're already in the best there is. And now when you have that Superman trait, you're better than even the best guys. And if you have that, if you have a Superman trait, you can go a long way with that. So, but anyway, so, and that's where, so that 4th trait is you got to be a playmaker somehow, some way. As a quarterback, you got to find ways to make that offense make plays at key moments.
Frank, I think the game's played so much more in space today than it was during our time. That's why you're seeing smaller linebackers. You don't see the Levon Kirklands like you did back in our time, the big guys, the Pepper Johnsons. You see more guys around 215, and there's more guys who have more latitude to be able to put their hand in the dirt and stand up. And the game is played so much more in space. Yeah. And that's why you're seeing a lot of defenses 2 deep, 2 high safeties deep, and guys playing more zone than they have back in the day when they played man. I mean, you're trying to keep everything underneath because there's so many great gifted athletes today down in the D line, especially at the edge. I mean, you're watching guys run 4-4 edge now. The kid from Tennessee ran a 4-4 from Tennessee, that kid James Pearson. You're like, holy cow, man. I mean, the game is so different. There's so many more athletes today that are all over the field. And like I said, again, when you play like Vic Fangio, and I'll get back to you and I can talk football forever. I mean, he plays that 2 high safety. He drops those corners back. You don't have to be a lockdown corner. The Eagles don't have lockdown corners, but what they have exceptional guys who know how to run in pursuit. They're great on pursuit angles. They're great tacklers. I think you got to be today, Frank, a better open field tackler than you've ever been. Back in the day, you could spear guys. If you don't have a good radar on people and you don't understand pursuit, angles of pursuit, this game's played in angles. Nothing's ever really played head up. It's played in angles. And if you understand that, you can always outrun somebody. That was one of the things Jimmy Johnson told us. The game is in angles. And so it's so much more in space today.
Yeah. And I think, like when you mentioned Vic Fangio and some of the other great coordinators on all sides of the ball, offense, defense, special teams, I think the other thing that they do is they teach their players how to play the game within the game. So there's the big game, but then, there's always the game within the game. And to me,
win your sandbox.
Yeah, that's right. And get it down into that little sandbox and understand how you fit into the bigger scheme. And if you can figure out how to play that game within the game, you just made the whole team better. And that's a big deal. And that's what Vic Fangio does. Like, you can say he plays cover 4. Anybody can, well, why isn't it, just the way he teaches that scheme, Vic was, when I was playing my 1 year at Carolina, when I was the starting quarterback there for the first 3 games, and then backed up Kerry Collins, Vic was the D coordinator. I can remember him back then, just how he taught those guys. Man, it was just at another level.
I'm going to get there, and I want to ask you, how did you get where you are now? I mean, Frank, I know that Maryland and you and them had conversations about potentially being the head football coach there, and then NFL. You always pursued that. You've gone through, like, I call you one of the great gypsies of all time with all the jobs you've ever had, because you've been everywhere, Frank. There's not really very few teams you haven't been, and you haven't gone up through the ranks of where you are right now. But talk about making that leap. Were you tired of the pro game? Were you tired of answering? Because Bill Belichick I thought of you when he took the Carolina job. I was like, man, Frank's probably just sick and tired of hearing GMs and owners. He goes, let me go run my own boat right now. Is that kind of what pushed you into seeing if this is for you, college football?
No, not really. This is just all about my relationship with Andrew. And
Oh, wow. Okay.
yeah, I mean, listen, that's why this is a 1-year thing. It's a perfect, we've been straight up with the kids here and everybody, the players here, they're grown men. It's a great group of young men here. And, the way Andrew handled it was like a complete pro. And we just told the kids, we told the players right up front, listen, man, this is a unique situation, to have to make a transition in your head coach at this time of year, right? I was on the job and the next day we were in spring ball, so it's just highly unusual, but let's embrace it. This is going to work this weekend. This is going to be a blast, and here's how we're going to make it work. So, I was able to kind of come in and say, hey, here's how we're going to operate. We're going to keep the coaching staff. Here's going to be our standards for the program. Let's make this something special and make this a year to remember. And so when Andrew called me and said, hey, Frank, I need your help. And I was like, yeah, man, what do you need? And he's like, I need you to come be the interim head coach. I'm like, are you crazy? I said, you have lost your mind. And he's like, no, I'm serious. And I'm like, you know what? That's actually just crazy enough that I might just do it, And no, I was, like you said, Dan, before, like I was focused on other things in life. I was playing some golf. My wife and I were going to do some travel. I mean, the ministry side of my life is important to me. So I had some things there that I was doing and plans on doing that I just put everything on hold, to come here for 9 months and just, pour my heart and soul out into the coaches and the players. That's what Andrew's asked me to do. I don't have to be the head coach of a college program as far as recruiting and NIL. Andrew's handling all that, right? I just have to come in and coach football. So for me, this is almost like an NFL job because of the unique nature of it. And that I can do. That I'm excited about doing. I'm excited about working with these college kids and teaching them football, and then also being able to kind of have some kind of impact personally as we get to know each other.
Don't you think something like this galvanizes the coaching staff and also players too? I don't know about you, Frank, but if I had a coach like you that walked in there and said, listen, guys, I'm here for you. I'm here to help you guys reach what you want. Because as a player, you and I know this, when you're a player, I got dreams, I got expectations. And when certain circumstances out of your control, you can't control, that could derail everything, especially at a prestigious school like that. Do you feel it galvanizing the program?
Yeah. Like you said, Dan, can it galvanize? Yeah. If you got the right people, and they do here, right? Starting with Andrew as the GM and as the leader of the program. That's what makes this work. He's the kind of core to the program. He's the ultimate leader of the program. So he's the continuity of the program. That's why I can come in here. It doesn't derail the kids that came here and their dream to come to Stanford, play big time, have obviously a great prestigious academic school, and play big time football. Andrew Luck is the continuity. I'll be here for 1 year. That's all I wanted to be here for. But he'll build the continuity with the next coach. And, I'm guessing that you never know, but that because we got a good coaching staff, many or all, or some of these coaches that are here will stay here. And I'm sure many of the principles that we lay down, because they're coming from Andrew and I working together. So when I leave, a lot of it, there's still going to be a lot of carryover in the way the program is run, because Andrew and I are like-minded in those areas.
Who's somebody you reached out to because this is obviously a different role for you, and I would assume maybe the most challenging role in your life, because there's an end. You've got an ending to this thing here. Is there somebody that you've reached out? Is there somebody, or is it a collection of people? Because it's college, and like you said, you're trying to make this as much of a pro situation for you to keep you in a comfort zone on how you delegate responsibility. So I kind of got where you are with that now. But has it been challenging, more challenging than being an NFL guy? Or is this because it's a different situation than anything I've ever heard?
Yeah, it is different. The biggest challenging thing to me is, the setup. Andrew has kind of put me in a great situation because I don't have to do all those other things. I can just coach football. The biggest challenging thing is, like, I want to get to know the players close. You know what I mean? Like, everywhere where I've ever been, like the relationship with the players is central, and there's no shortcut for that. That just takes time. So, so I'm just going to do the best I can do, right, to get to know everybody, and then bring all the football expertise that you bring. We got a good coaching staff here. I'm excited. I learn from these guys. We'll kind of meld something together. I can't do an overhaul on the playbook because it's it's too late to do that. But we will do some things. There will be a lot that we can do. But we also have to get to know I have to get to know the players to see how do we accentuate what they do. But ultimately, it really comes down to the kids. That's what, when Andrew called me, he said, "Frank, I'm trying to do right by these players. We had to do what we had to do to make this transition." And like the big thing that Andrew said, the big statement and I made this in the press conference as well, is, hey, we're not hitting the pause button. We're not going backwards. And so in Andrew's mind, like, how can we do that? He knew what kind of an offense that we would kind of migrate to with me coming in here, working with the other coaches. Let's get this rolling, build into the coaches and players, and let's take a step forward. And we both really believe that we can and will do that.
I have become friends with Marv Levy, and I was friends, and I asked him one of the most important things as a coach that he used to tell his coaching staff. And he said, when you come to work with me, don't guard your desk. Right. If you have a certain amount of time to get your work done, go home. Go get your work done and go home. Have you set those kind of parameters? And then you and me know we could turn around and there's a guy like Coach Ross who believed in hard-ass work. Okay? Yeah. So you kind of put it all together, Frank. Is that kind of – have you laid those kind of parameters out for your coaching staff? Because Jimmy Johnson told me a head coach is only as good as the assistant coaches he has, because if he doesn't have great assistants around him, it is not going to work. Is that what you've kind of instilled in these guys?
Well, there's no question that's true, what Coach Johnson said. And secondly, we have laid down. And I would like to think that I'm a blend of those two things that you said. Don't guard your desk, but at the same, and what I've told the guys, in fact, right before we got on, I was in here with the coach and we were talking about the plan for the rest of the week. And in fact, we were talking about that very thing. And I was saying, no, hey, on this night, just get the guys out of here early, go home. Because, everybody has iPads, so they can go home and grade, put their kids to bed, and then stay up and grade the film. Put their kids to bed, have dinner with their wife, whatever the kid, and then stay up and get the film. Just get this work done, get it done with excellence, but we can have some flexibility with the schedule. The difference, as you know, Dan, the big difference here is we just don't have that much meeting time with the players. Yeah. Compared to the NFL, where you're meeting with them all day. You can spend as much time as you want with them. At this level, you can't do that. So it gives the coaches a little bit extra time. And so we can still work hard, but have some flexibility and create a culture where, we have a very young coaching staff. We went to a function yesterday. I met most of the families, the wives, the kids, and there were a lot of them, And so, they can get home with their kids, but we still got to work hard.
Well, I have to ask you some Eagle questions now. How proud were you when those seconds were ticking off for your guy, Nick Sirianni, that there it was, their guy you recommended to the Philadelphia Eagles, and when everyone called you when you were at Indianapolis and you said, this is the guy, how proud were you of that moment that you saw him win that Super Bowl, 2 Super Bowl runs in 3 years? He wins it. Just give me your takeaway when you first initially saw that they had won the Super Bowl and there your guy was standing there, a champion.
Yeah, so happy for him. So well-deserved. After, the meltdown that team had the year before, for him to come back like that and to galvanize that team and make that run and win the Super Bowl was amazing. But listen, I was happy for him, but I'm not surprised. when I got the head job in Indy, after I was with the Eagles and we won the Super Bowl and I was the coordinator, and then the whole thing with the Colts and how I got that head job and how crazy that was. And I walked in the building there and I said, we need one guy. I need one guy. I need Nick Sirianni. And Nick was the wide receiver coach with the Chargers at the time. So, and he was under contract and it was going to be hard to get him out. But, thanks to Tom Telesco and Anthony Lynn for letting Nick have a chance. They knew how good of a coach he was. And you're the receiver coach, so you're probably a couple steps. You don't see too many receiver coaches going to coordinator. You usually come from the quarterback room. I knew Nick was the best coach I'd ever been around. I mean, we worked together for 3 years in San Diego when I was the quarterback coach and then the offensive coordinator for a couple of years. Nick made me such a better coach. The way he understands the game, the way he coaches players, I knew he was the best coach I had been around. So his success with the Eagles, not a surprise. He kids with me, because I'm older, I'm like the bigger brother. And he tells me all the time, man, I learned this, that, I said, Nick, let me just tell you, I learned so much more from you. You are the best coach I've ever been around. And so couldn't be happier for him.
When you were in San Diego, I was in San Diego, and I never realized that Nick was the receiver coach and the QB coach, and then you became the OC, and he was working for you there. I mean, that dynamic, you always hear people talking, and I hear even Jalen Hurts talking about how they pull out tape on what Phillip Rivers did, and it was the three of you working with Phillip. One of the best years he ever really had was in Indianapolis, and also when you were the coordinator in San Diego was one of the best years. That seems to be Jalen Hurts' go-to. What does Phillip Rivers do, Frank, that is so special that other quarterbacks want to become and want to do in this league?
Well, he has that elite accuracy that we talked about, earlier. And he has that the mental and physical toughness, second to none. Phillip Rivers, second to none, second to none. His accuracy, second to none. And then he's a playmaker, man, the guy, and then a great leader. I mean, guys look up to him. He knows how to lead a football team. And but it's funny, you're talking about, when I was at San Diego as the offensive coordinator, I had Nick. You know who else was in that trio?
There's somebody else on the staff too that I can't remember.
Shane Steichen.
Yeah, Shane Steichen was on that.
It was Nick and Shane and myself. Mike McCoy was the head coach.
Yep.
The first year when I was the quarterback coach, Ken Wisenhunt was the offensive coordinator, and then Wiz went on to be the head coach with Tennessee for his second stint at a head coach. Wiz, a great coach. And then, Coach McCoy moved me to OC, and I had Nick and Shane. And so it was Nick and Shane and I, putting the whole offense together. And that offense in 14 and 15 for the Chargers was pretty, that pass offense was pretty potent. Gates at the end of his career, Keenan Allen, and then Phillip had 2 monster years.
I have to ask you this. Obviously, after Kellen Moore got the job in New Orleans, and I had heard Nick say that he was doing some courtesy calls. Was there a courtesy call to you? And again, I mean, I know that you were probably still involved with a contract still with Carolina. I mean, but was there ever any thought of you being a consultant or potentially becoming the offensive coordinator with the Eagles? Did you ever have that call? Did he give you a courtesy call for you to deny it, for you not to accept it, or what have you? Because there was a lot of talk of you being in Philadelphia, and a lot of people were saying that you would have been the right guy, but maybe it wasn't just the time. Did that happen?
Yeah, no, before that all happened, we had already had a conversation in previous times like that. I was not going back to that role at that time. So with any team, because I did have, I had talked to other teams about different roles. We have had conversations about kind of, like you said, a consultant role. And I knew if Kellen, I mean, obviously the thought went through my mind. I mean, come on, I love the Eagles.
No, and they love
Howie Roseman.
The owner loves you. The owner loves you too, and that's why. Because there was a lot of conversation that you would take a consulting role, and they had offered you a consulting role.
Well, and like you said, I loved Howie Roseman. I love Mr. Lurie. He is an amazing, amazing owner. I mean, my 2 years there, I can't even tell you how impressive he was. And then, of course, Nick is my brother. I mean, that's my brother. And so, yeah, there was the competitor side of me, but but I also know the staff that Nick has, and like I'm really happy for Kevin Petula. Like that's the right move. I've kind of I had my chance. I had my run. Won a Super Bowl as an offensive coordinator with the Eagles. It's time for someone else to take that reins. And so, and Nick and I had a previous conversation before that even came. Like, hey, here's where I'm at. So have we talked about? Had we talked about possible consultant thing? Yeah, we had talked about that kind of stuff. And I was just still, and it was very gracious of Nick saying, hey, man, let's talk about this. Would love to kind of reconnect. And we just agreed, let's wait, let's let all the dust settle. And so we were just going to let the dust settle. And then they won the Super Bowl. And we had just kind of agreed that, in the next month or two, we'd kind of revisit it and see if it felt right. And then this came up. So,
Frank,
yeah.
would you have taken that consulting role if this hadn't come up?
I possibly would have. Yeah. Just because of Nick and because of Howie and Mr. Lurie and because of the Eagles. And the way that Nick was describing, kind of how it would look and work, it would have been something that I think could have worked. There were a lot of details to work out. So maybe it wouldn't have, but I think there was a chance it could have.
Phenomenal. What's your takeaway on the growth? And you know what? I get Bruce Arians on now, and he believes that maybe this is where the quarterback in college football, maybe you guys have a guy like this, like Jalen Hurts. He thinks there's going to be more dual threat type guys with the athleticism to be able to get out in space, make plays with their legs and their arms. When you see the development of Jalen Hurts, I think he's helping this kid, Jalen Milroe, fly up the draft board right now because of what you see with dual threat now winning a Super Bowl. When you see his growth, Jalen Hurts' growth, what's your takeaway on him?
Well, first of all, the guy is a winner. I mean, everybody's known that from day one about the guy. He's a winner. Number two, his work ethic is second to none. I just know that from talking to Nick and the other guys, and how highly Nick speaks about him as a leader, as a person, as a quarterback, and his work ethic. And, and number three, he is a dual threat, but at the end of the day, and this is still my personal belief, yes, you want a dual threat guy, but at the end of the day, you still need to be able to win games from the pocket. And
right.
Jalen did that in big games. And so he did, and he threw for a ton of yards down, in that Super Bowl. So, yeah, there's no question that the dual threat quarterback in the run game, it is such an advantage. It is such an advantage because it holds the backside. It keeps the backside honest. And that's a big deal.
Couple last ones here for you, Frank. Is it true, Frank?
You're working me hard today.
Hey, no, man. I mean, I'm sorry, dude. I know you're so busy, man.
I mean, you're killing me.
I know. Well, hey, let me ask you. I'm gonna ask
for you, the world. Dan, for you, the world.
I know you're so good to me, man. You always are.
No,
Can I ask you one last hard one?
Sure.
All right. Did you have say in who was going to be selected? The quarterback in Carolina I'm going to put it so that I don't put you in a box here. I'm going to ask you a question out. Was that decision mostly yours, or was that taken out of your hands on what that position? Because, by the way, I think Bryce, he's one of my guys I think is going to have a bounce back year. I like that kid. I loved what I saw against him against the Eagles this last year. I think there's some intangibles. If you put a better team around him, there could be something there. But was that decision taken out of your hands on what quarterback was to be selected between C.J. Stroud and Bryce Young?
No, it was a good process, and it was, organizations are set up, most NFL organizations are set up one or two ways. Either the GM has ultimate control over everything, ultimate control of the roster, or the head coach does. Most teams, it's the GM and then the head coach. And the GM has control of the roster, and the head coach has control of who suits up and who plays. So, ultimately the GM's responsible, and the whole scouting staff, and they had done the work. But listen, and so when I got there is no question there was a strong leaning towards Bryce when I walked in the door. But when you watch the tape, when I met the player, when I talked to him and we wore out the process, I said, this guy is a winner, extraordinarily talented winner. He's highly accurate, all those things we talked about.
Yep.
He's tough. He's mentally and physically tough. He has all the he's just not a big guy, And so, but that didn't, as I got to know him and watch him play, that ended up not being a major concern. That ended up not being a major concern. And I think he showed that this year. I mean, I was so happy to see the way he played this year and how it came about.
Yeah.
Boy, the start of the season for the team was so bad. And then Andy Dalton comes in and Andy's a true pro. And man, all of a sudden it looks like there's a little life to the organization. That thing could have went the other way and never bounced back. So what he did,
I know,
that is so much credit to him and really to Andy and to Coach Canales and the way that was all handled, to, the whole organization, the way they did that, and this guy, right. I mean, it didn't work out for me there, whatever. I mean, it's the NFL. Sometimes you don't always get the break that you need, but I've had so many good breaks in my career the other way. You get one bad break, you're like, okay, whatever. But I'm still happy for Bryce and still happy for that team, that it seems like the team's on the right trajectory.
Final question for you. What are your expectations this year? Nick Saban talks about process more than he talks about wins. He says his entire coaching career changed when he went from going, we have to win this amount of games, we have to win here. It was more, he said, when I decided to go into coaching and talk to kids about our process, we won more games because of the process and what our standards were set for. It's kind of a loaded question here for you a little bit here, Coach, but I mean, do you have expectations? Is there anything you're looking at? What's the one thing at the end of the year of a Frank Reich Stanford Cardinal football team that you want people to know at the end of this? They go, he coached this team and you put your stamp on it. What is that one thing?
I mean, we're going to have high standards and we're going to live up to those standards. And as you just said, Dan, I mean, the whole thing, and you ask any player that has ever played for me and said, what's Frank going to talk about? We're going to talk about, it's about the process and it's about people. You get the process right, you get the people right, and the results follow. I got that from Marv Levy. Marv used to say, winning's not our goal. Excellence in preparation is our goal. Winning results.
That's right.
Who talks like that? All the great coaches.
Yep.
That's who talks like that. All the great coaches.
Yep.
Oh, we got to win. We got to win. We got to, of course we got to win. Of course we're trying to win. But we also know, and this is the frustrating part as a coach, and this is the challenging part for me in 1 year here. Like, sometimes you get the people right and the process right, and the results are going to follow, but sometimes they lag.
Yep.
Sometimes the results lag in business, in life, in football. Sometimes you hit it right, man, and you see the immediate results. And that's what obviously I'm hoping for here, that we're going to come in, we're going to make an impact, we're going to get the process right. Man, we set these standards. We're going to live up to these standards. And man, the Stanford, community is going to be proud of this football team, not only about how we play, but the results that we get. That's the ultimate goal. But in life, sometimes the results do lag. But I'll double down on the process anytime, anywhere.
Coach, my wife's a rugby coach, and she was talking this year about, she's like, the kids just aren't getting it. The year before, they got it right away. And I go, hey, sometimes you get the eggs and sometimes you get the shells. When it comes to the team, I go, and sometimes the kid catches it late. They catch it early. They find their identity early. I go, it's up to you to keep your patience, because coaches get frustrated just like players too. I mean, you got to keep that even keel. And that's why, Frank, I've always thought you had the great temperament to be a coach, because you had that Tony Dungy and Marv Levy attitude where you never got too high, you never get too low. And that's why I think you're going to have great success. I've known you for over 40 years. Our car rides with Vic Kronberg all the way up to New York and back with Boomer in the car and Pete Koch. You guys should have seen this car. We're up going back and forth.
Crazy.
Who would have thought those kids right now where we are? I mean, Pete's doing really well. Boomer's a star in New York, and here you are now, the head football coach of the Stanford Cardinal football. Congratulations to you. I love you to death. You're one of my dear friends for my whole life, and I thank you so much for doing this, and God bless. We'll catch up again during the season. I can't wait to see the Cardinal football.
I appreciate it, Dan. Love you, brother, and all the best to you.
You bet. Thank you, Coach. That is Frank Reich. Man, I really love that guy. What a really great coach. What a great journey. And by the way, did you hear what he said? The Eagles had offered him the coordinate or the consulting job. He was going to take the consulting job. I asked him, would you have taken that job? He said yes. Then this parachuted in. Frank was coming back as a consultant for the Eagles. He didn't want to be the coordinator role. Nick was carving out a role for him. Did you hear what he said? Nick was carving out a role for Frank Reich as a consultant on the coaching staff. I mean, that's the first time any of us have ever heard that, isn't it? Nick Sirianni, elite. How you doing? Hey, Xander, I don't know about you, but that's a soundbite. That he's said that Nick was a great coach. There's one. Okay, I heard him. And second, they offered him the consulting job. You notice I wasn't going to let that go. And they were going to carve a role out for him with the Philadelphia Eagles. But the Stanford job came in. I guarantee you next year, how many people, after what you just heard, believe that Frank Reich will be a consultant and on that coaching staff next year in Philadelphia? I do. I do. How you doing? How you doing? That's how you get. Now look, he knew I was being a little. Let's see. I guarantee he goes, "Hey man, hey, I got it. I guarantee you, he just texted me. I know he did. Okay. Okay, yeah. He just said, only you can ask me questions like that. I never would have answered that. He loves the Eagle organization. He does. Okay. Elizabeth, I asked him if he was going to take the consulting job, and he said yes. Then this came in. He didn't want the offensive coordinator's job. Hit the like button, guys. Right, Sue? They had Nick was carving a rollout, and coach's exact words were how it was going to look. We got Gary Cobb at the bottom of the hour, and we will ask him then what he thought about that. That they had asked him to be a consultant, even with Kevin Patullo in the building. The owner had to be okay with this, and so did Howie Roseman. By the way, this will make a great tweet. Holy cow. The Eagles were carving out a role for Frank Reich. Frank said it. Go back and watch it. Hit that like button. Gary Cobb will join us at the bottom of the hour. Great stuff, man. Great stuff. Big sales here for our friends at Morgan & Morgan, the number one injury law firm in America with over $25 billion. recovered for clients across the country. Absolutely insane on what they've done for families across America with their thousands of attorneys. Right here in Pennsylvania, a family was offered $650K. They ended up getting $26 million. In Florida, a family was offered $350,000. No way. They ended up getting nearly $12.5 million in recovery. This is the track record for Morgan & Morgan. If you're ever injured, please do me a favor and go and check out our friends at Morgan & Morgan, forthepeople.com/big sales or pound law 529. That's FORthepeople.com/big sales or pound law 529. And do me a favor, you tell them Big Sales sent you.
This is Eric. When he got